Welcome back to part 2. In part 1 of this topic, we talked about how a research question comes about, how they commonly arise from recognition of a problem or from making an observation. Here, we'll start to talk about how do we refine a research question. First, you need to start thinking in detail about what you already know about the research question. So you got to use a step-by-step approach to refine the question and be as specific as possible. This often requires identifying preconditions, making assumptions, and creating intermediate hypotheses, or providing a theory as to why the problem exists or how to solve it. Here we are given an observation, which represents a problem. Why are treatment success rates low? This problem is converted into a question, the why of formulating a research question. You quickly recognize that there are many possible reasons for the low success rates. And from these, you can form intermediate hypotheses. You may want to gather some more information or preliminary data to examine these intermediate hypotheses. But each of them can then raise a question or a specific set of questions that have sufficient specificity to be addressed using a research study. So for example, what are the barriers to access that are leading to low treatment success rates? Or what is the optimal staffing ratio in your clinic to improve the low treatment success rates? Or are guidelines being followed? Right? Is that the reason why treatment success rates are low or not where you want them to be? And last, what is the prevalence of comorbidities that might explain why treatment success rates are low? So by forming sort of these different hypotheses, you can begin to sort of add specificity to the actual research question that you want to answer. And then you use kind of research to figure out which of these is the right question to answer or has been addressed before, or is the most likely going to lead you to addressing the goal that you've started with. Let's move on to identifying a good question. Right? So first, is the observation or problem important? Right? If it's not important, even to yourself, then this is probably not something that's worth doing research on. Is the possible solution under your control? Is this a problem that you could address? Right? Are the solutions something that you can actually carry out in your context? If not, it might be interesting to know about, right? But it's not really likely something that's going to inform how public health or clinical care in your context occurs. Will answering the question clarify the observation? Right? Will it shed more light on sort of what's going on and why sort of there are discrepancies, why the discrepancies you observed are occurring? Is it possible to develop a feasible, effective, and sustainable intervention as a solution? It's really important that you need to sort of keep that in mind at the time that you're proposing this question. Will the solution improve clinical practice or a program's ability to reach its objectives or have an impact on access, quality, efficiency, or cost? These are the types of metrics that we're interested in terms of improving sort of clinical care or public health. So in moving from a research idea to a research question, there's a couple things you have to think about. Is your identified observation or problem worth investigating? Has it already been addressed? Will solving the issue improve health? Is it a priority issue? Right? And second, will your research question contribute knowledge to the field? Will it improve clinical or public health practice? Will it improve people's lives? So all of these things help to kind of carry out both the innovation and the significance of your research. Key things that funders use to decide which applications should be scored well and which don't score as well. When you're developing a research question, to help you figure out whether it's significant or innovative, you have to review the scientific literature around the topic to figure out what's known and what remains to be known. The question that you pose should logically fill the gap of what is unknown about a research issue. It has to be specific enough about that you can actually answer it, and it has to be focused. It can't be too vague, right, or too narrow. These are a set of criteria called the FINER criteria for a good research question, and they're important for you to go through to make sure that your question sort of meets each one of them. So the criteria is your question feasible to address? Is it interesting? Is it novel? Is it ethical? And is it relevant? Right? So feasible means, are there an adequate number of subjects in your context to address the question? Do you have adequate technical expertise? Is it affordable in terms of time and money to carry out this research? Is it manageable in scope given the resources that you have? Is it interesting? Right? Is getting the answer, does it intrigue you? Right? And not just you, right? If something interests you but doesn't interest any of your colleagues or any of those who you work with, then you really have to go back and think about whether it's a good research question. Is it novel? Does it confirm, refute, or extend previous findings, or does it provide new findings? So everything doesn't have to be new, right? It might be worth studying something again in a slightly different context, or if it was shown once, to repeat it to make sure that the previous observation was true. Is it ethical? Right? Is it amenable to study to a study that an IRB will approve? And lastly, is it relevant to scientific knowledge? Is it going to improve clinical or health policy? Is it relevant to sort of generating future research questions if you're at the stage that you're still trying to help figure out what's going on? So in terms of a summary so far, so a good research idea is either an observation or a problem that's restated as a question. To be useful, in general, you have to refine that initial question. And to make it a good question and help you refine it, there are specific criteria, which are the finer criteria that must be met. So in the next part, we're going to talk about actually the anatomy of the research question and each aspect of it: the population, the intervention or exposure, the comparator, and the outcome.